Hi, Brittany. Thank you so much for coming on board and speaking today. I've heard so much about you. Like I said, we kind of ran into, I've seen you speak at different Stacks events, but super happy to finally get the opportunity to speak to you one-on-one. I'll introduce myself first. My name is Alla Koretsky. I'm the CEO for Layer. And for the past year, we have been building a one-stop shop sort of NFT management platform that allows any creatives to come in to start minting and creating their NFT businesses. We provide things like sort of customized storefronts and custom URLs and easy credit card payment checkout. And you can have royalties with your collaborators. So like a super easy platform for anyone outside of crypto community to start coming in and start growing and managing their NFT businesses. And so we're launching an event December 10th called the SatoSHE event, which aims to highlight and empower women creatives all over the world. And so one of the women that I sort of been looking up at is Brittany, and she has been gracious enough to come and join us. So Brittany, would you like to introduce yourself? And I'll give the microphone to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It is great to finally, connect, even if just virtually. I think I've admired all of the work that you're doing and bringing in a lot of new creators. Because my background, I work now at the Stacks Foundation, where we're supporting builders, creating a user-owned internet. Now, most of that's happening on the Stacks blockchain, but I've been in this industry since about 2014. And the goal was always like, how do we give new tools to builders to create businesses that have never existed before, unlocking a lot of the creativity that exists. So, started with being an investor at Union Square Ventures. We invested in Coinbase, and at the same time, we invested in Stacks and Filecoin and some of these others. So the goal was always like, how can people use this to really make like life-changing technology? And I think it's taken a very long time. This is 7 years later, but I'm really seeing a lot of that emerge now with just like the creations of NFTs and DeFi and new types of businesses that couldn't exist without the blockchain. So I'm really excited about what you're doing, and I'm excited to hopefully inspire some more creatives to get involved in this really growing, exciting space.
Thank you. I mean, absolutely. I would love to learn sort of, so you said you started on this journey back in 2014. What kind of pushed you into, so you came from the investor side, right, and sort of traditional investing. So is it that through your investments and the companies that you were looking at, you got into the crypto space, or what was your journey and how did you sort of fall down the rabbit hole? I love to hear those stories.
Yeah. Well, we first, at USV, we were looking at like, what comes next? Because we saw these tech monoliths like Google and Facebook. They were like sucking all of the innovation out of the internet. They were just acquiring all the small companies. There wasn't a lot of new stuff that was possible for consumers because of these big players. So the thesis was really, how do we invest in things that these companies won't do or can't do? And when we learned about Bitcoin, that was kind of this idea that like nobody owns it. It's totally decentralized. A big company can't come in and like control how it works. And so the belief was like, wow, there's going to be some really interesting things that get built using blockchains. And that's when I first discovered Stacks. At the time, it was called One Name. And I've been able to follow the project since, it was just an idea, two engineers kind of coming together to where it is today. And along that journey, I started investing more and more in crypto. I left Union Square Ventures and started my own fund. About 20% of that fund was just in crypto companies. That was like pre-ICO days. So this was very early. Most people thought like, what is Bitcoin? What is blockchain? This is like stupid or it's scammy, and just being a firm believer in the technology. So, when there was an opportunity to join the Stacks team, it seemed like, a once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to really impact the future of this tech and not just sit on the sidelines as an investor, but actually getting involved. And I think that's the great thing about blockchain. It gives everyone access to get involved and actually have some of that value because, you can purchase tokens, you can kind of hold that value over time. So you don't have to be a VC in order to get exposure to these ideas you believe in. You can actually be owners alongside everyone else who's building. So that was sort of the game changer for me. So I've been involved in the Stacks ecosystem now for 3 years. First starting at Hero, helping with our fair token sale, and then now at the Stacks Foundation, which is really about funding builders through grants, being able to educate people about this new technology in Web3, and supporting governance, which is a really key part of any blockchain ecosystem.
So can you tell everyone sort of what in few sentences, what is Stacks and how is it different from other blockchains?
Yeah, the way you can think about Stacks is it's adding smart contract functionality to Bitcoin. So it's a layer one protocol. So we have our own token, but that token supports the mining of new blocks, which process smart contracts on our chain. And if that's like all too technical, some people are like, oh, is this like Ethereum? Ethereum is the most sort of popular smart contracts platform. So it is similar that it has smart contracts, but the difference is the underlying value ties to Bitcoin, which is, the most widely held asset, the most recognized asset in the cryptocurrency space. And Stacks is finally allowing smart contracts to be able to be ultimately settled on the Bitcoin chain, which is very new and very exciting because this has never been possible before.
Awesome. And I know there's this whole sort of talk on sustainability and how Stacks is sort of a more friendlier alternative. Can you tell everyone a little bit about that?
Sure, good question. Yeah, so Bitcoin, gets criticized because it uses proof of work, which means it uses electricity to mine new tokens. Now, what Stacks chain does is through its consensus called proof of transfer, miners actually use Bitcoin. So they submit Bitcoin instead of burning electricity, they're burning Bitcoin in order to mine new Stacks tokens. So that means that we're reusing that electricity that was already created from the Bitcoin chain, so that Bitcoin being the proxy. So we're not creating new proof of work systems. You don't need to have a big mining operation in order to mine Stacks tokens. Instead, you just have to hold Bitcoin. So anyone can do it, and it's not adding more processing power that isn't necessary because Bitcoin is already secure and one of the largest. So we're just tying to it instead of having to recreate that whole system.
How do you think is the best way? Because that's a conversation, I'm hearing that coming from different types of creatives. Like we just spoke with an illustrator the other day, and she said, well, she almost has to use a private, like a different entity in order for her to mint this NFT collection, because the illustrator community is kind of bashing her into getting into the space, because I think there's this miscommunication that's happening, right? So how do we educate people? And is it just talking more about it and sort of showing the benefits, that it's not just so like black and white, right? There's this information that sits on the internet. I think that kind of overpowers a lot of the misconceptions. So how do we sort of get the most amount of people educated and about not just sort of the sustainability aspect, but sort of the benefits of coming into even Stacks and using sort of NFTs on Bitcoins?
Yeah, well, I think what you're doing, and I would love for you to share more about the work that you're doing, because I think getting the tools in the hands of creators, it's like what really inspires people. And I think it's very easy to be scared of new technology. There's a lot of buzzwords, there's like a lot of information, there's a lot of noise around like people, scams or people making billions of dollars. And it doesn't really feel that friendly, I think, to a lot of creators if you're just reading those headlines. I think the platforms that are doing the work are ones like yours, where it's bringing in individuals and saying, you want to be able to make art and find customers. And we make that easier than ever before. You can build these communities and relationships you never could before. So like that technology is super powerful, but it's hard to see that unless you get a first experience. And I think like NFTs are a great way to get people in because it's friendly. It feels like it's art. You can talk about your art that you're collecting in a way that's way more approachable than something like even like DeFi, where you're just like, oh, I made all this yield. Like that's not very fun. You're like not going to talk about that at like a dinner party or with your friends. It feels like a very weird conversation. So to me, the tools are what's really important because, I think if you look at the internet in general, it's not a low energy business. Like the amount of money that goes into all the servers and all of the infrastructure is huge. So if that's what's going to deter you from using technology, I think it's hard to use any technology without being critical of those things. So I'm kind of like, okay, let's just step back. Why are we here? We're here to build cool new things and make people's lives better. And I think that the blockchain is just a tool that, how you use it, as long as you're using it responsibly, it's really fun and cool.
Absolutely. And I think, to your question, how do we sort of talk about it? The interesting thing is we're kind of putting a face to this really, to some people, it's like a scary topic. Exactly you said, it's like, the unknown, right? The unknown kind of brings a lot of these sort of questions in your head, like, well, is this a scam? Is this this? Is this this? And putting a face to something like you think is unrelatable for me, how I kind of make these personal connections is that we'll have different people sort of reaching out, inquiring what Layer is, and making a simple connection with this person and just scheduling a 15-minute talk, like 15-minute call, and just finding out about them, who they are as an artist, what's their journey, how did they get here. It ends up it's mostly women that I've been speaking with, right? And it's not like this is even before like the Satoshi idea came into our minds, right? We are a women sort of led company, right? So it's Marina Romashko, she's my co-founder. Gary Reiger is actually my cousin. He's always been very revolutionary and sort of forward thinking on technology. He's the one that sort of pushed me into this blockchain and fell down the rabbit hole end of 2019. And so have, it will completely revolutionize like the way we live life as we know it. My background was I was a buyer for many years, so sourcing products, seeing the entire sort of supply chain, and there was the issues that came with it, right? And so when I learned about blockchain, I was just completely blown away how now we can have, I trust code over people, right? I know that kind of sounds weird, but you can't tinker with code, right? So there's proof of everything that you can say. So if you're saying that you are a women-founded company, there's proof of that. If you're saying that you're using organic ingredients, there's proof of that. And then sort of this cultural, this like revolution that happened through COVID times, I think kind of moved this project, this sort of whole movement forward. But I feel like there's still a lot of women that are in the sidelines, right? That are still kind of scared about even the word about NFTs and what's blockchain. As soon as you kind of mention, they're like, oh, no, I don't have time for that. And I wonder if it's because we're just a lot more busy. We're not just running companies and we're also running households, right? And it's like, do you have the extra hour a day to learn something new? And I had to, because we based our business around blockchain. So it's like, I was, thrown into this, but I was always kind of interested to learn new things. So it's kind of, just making those connections with the women, 15 minutes, and they become, sort of our words. And like, it was such a pleasant sort of connection that I wouldn't expect otherwise, and they always kind of like, it's so nice to put a human face to the company. So for me, it's been a really interesting journey just in the past, 6 months, connecting with creators from all over the world. We've been speaking to, the Navajo Nation and figuring out how we can preserve the art that's been in their communities for generations and generations, and helping the young people sort of use this technology to create things that's like relevant to them, right? In this new sort of metaverse space. I have a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, and they're so, they live in the metaverse, right? With the whole Minecraft and the Fortnites, they get it, right? But I feel like it's a harder sort of education for, it's a harder turnaround for someone that's older. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, how do you think sort of the NFT movement will affect women in the future, and will it, and how can we help more women sort of enter into the space without feeling intimidated?
Well, I mean, I think you're doing the work. It's like, 15 minutes of conversation with someone who's in this space goes such a long way. And I've seen this as well throughout my journey of just talking to people and kind of, there's a little bit of hand-holding up front for anyone who's new. And I think the building trust with other people, it is sort of that human connection that matters. And I think with NFTs, what's great is it can be really fun. It's like, okay, well, maybe you send someone an NFT as their first experience in crypto. And it's something they admire, it's something they like, or it's like a piece they're proud of because it represents something about them. Like that's a really cool way to get into the space because especially if someone gifts you an NFT, you just need to have a receiving address. And I think that's like a
Mhm.
great first step. It can be very
Okay.
intimidating to be like, go buy an NFT. And that involves multiple steps of like, okay, well, you have to set up a wallet and then you have to go to an exchange and, KYC and then get your tokens and then send it in. So I think we're asking a lot of people by trying that as your very first step. So, the easier thing is like, how do we create a community where we can create sort of the sharing, this easier access, even things like airdrops are a great way to get people involved. And then from there, I think it just creates a conversation channel of being able to talk to people, helping them understand where there's different marketplaces where they could like sell it or trade it or buy other ones. So I think it's a really fun avenue that I didn't expect, back in the day of how people would get involved. But I think that it's really changing. And what I've also seen in the Stacks ecosystem is that we've had so many amazing women designers create NFTs and mint them. And they're getting really excited about all the ways they can bring their art to a wider audience. And they can actually, make enough money to be full-time artists and to kind of go down that route. So we've seen things like Stackulants, Crash Punks. There's some really cool things like designed by women that have already come up in the Stacks NFT marketplace. Most of them are only a few months old, so we've already seen hundreds of millions of dollars being exchanged in these marketplaces. People excited doing drops in these areas. So it's not about the money, but it's amazing the community that can be built once you kind of put your art into the world and see who's there to support you or get involved behind what you're going to do. So I think with Layer, it's great that you'll be shepherding even more of those artists into the ecosystem and getting their first taste of how do you do it? How can they get connected to more people?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Brittany. I think we're out of time, but thank you so much for your time. It's super nice to finally meet you, and I hope it's not the last time we meet each other.
Yeah. And if you're new to NFTs or any of that stuff, find me on Twitter at
I will.
BR_TTANY. Let me know. I'm trying to get more NFTs that I can share with other people. So
Oh,
maybe I'll drop you an
awesome.
NFT if it's your
Yay.
first
Thank you.
time.
I
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you so
Thank you so
much.
much, Brittany. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.